Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Signant webinar in conjunction with our partners, ThoughtSphere. Today, we're going to talk about optimizing clinical data management with a focus on end-to-end processes from data capture all the way through to analysis-ready data sets. If you go to the next slide, please. So before we get started, just a few housekeeping points. Please ask questions at any time during the presentation today, and you can do this by clicking the Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation today, but any that we don't get to, we'll answer those by email after the event. Also, when you exit today's webinar, you'll be invited to answer a very short survey. We'd be really grateful if you're able to answer those questions. It helps us to improve our webinars in the future. So thank you for that. So I'm Bill Byram. I'm Vice President of Product Intelligence and Positioning at Signant Health, and I'm going to be moderating today's event. I'm joined by two industry experts, each with a broad history in clinical data management. So Jan Breemans is Signant's Senior Director of Technical Solutions, and Jan previously led data management in a mid-sized pharmaceutical company. And Christina Dinger is ThoughtSphere's Senior Director of Product, and she brings with her a significant experience of data management within various CROs as well. You go to the next slide, please. So our presenters are going to use live demonstrations to speak about the end-to-end data capture and management process, and focusing on data capture, data aggregation, targeted monitoring, and downstream advanced data management. So just before I hand over to them, let me just provide a very brief introduction of our two companies, Signant Health and ThoughtSphere. So Signant is known for the provision of leading clinical technologies and services for over 20 years. Our technologies comprehensively span the key components required for any modern clinical trial, including EDC, eCOA, randomization and trial supply management, e-consent and telemedicine. And we'll talk today about our unified platform that contains these solutions and simplifies workflows and usage for sites and patients. At Signant, we're aware that successful e-clinical isn't just about good technology solutions, but successful implementation involves a combination of good solutions with our in-house scientific expertise, our global scale, and our attentive, experienced service provision. Next slide, please. So founded in 2015, ThoughtSphere is at the forefront of clinical research, offering an end-to-end data orchestration platform that supported over 180 clinical trials. Their cloud-based platform is highly adaptable, scalable, and quick to deploy. It leverages AI, machine learning, and process automation to reduce cycle times in data management processes. And with the capability to support raw data ingestion, data transformation, and operational reviews, ThoughtSphere simplifies the path to data analysis and clinical study report submission. So whether you're operating fully in-house, working with external partners, or using an FSP model, ThoughtSphere seamlessly integrates across any operational team setup. You go to the next slide. I'm just going to hand over to our presenters as we explore the end-to-end data management process, from data capture to the delivery of clean analysis-ready data sets. And through our demonstrations and presentations, you'll see how the combination of Signant's unified platform and ThoughtSphere's data orchestration platform can provide a full end-to-end solution and simplify the end-to-end data management process. So first, let me hand over to Jan, who will speak about the first part of this process, which is starting with data collection and data monitoring using unified platform. Jan.
Thank you, Bill. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I have already logged in. Purpose, what I'm going to show you is a little bit what does our unified platform offer your stakeholders, your site users, in terms of a unified experience, in terms of collecting data, getting data from patients, starting from consent up until EDC, over to randomization. And at a later stage in the webinar, we will then obviously be talking about how do we process the data. But first things first, we first want to get started with the patient and with the site. So as Bill has said, we have a unified platform giving also not you a full end-to-end perspective, but also giving your site users and your patients a fully unified experience. And let me take you through that. I have set up a patient for the sake of ease to go through the demo. And your patients and your sites have a full unified experience here. Let me show how we get started not by creating a patient. That's fairly straightforward. It's clicking on a single button, but taking your patients and your sites through. Patients can obviously be consenting. We have a full integrated or unified e-consent module as part of our solution. And that's pretty straightforward. Whenever we create a patient will get an automatic email notification with login details, pretty similar to this screen as what you can see here. And they can log in either using the link itself in the email through a QR code if we would deliver that, and have the ease of consenting, verifying what the consent is about at home. They would have the ease of having a televisit conversation with the site user, or even the consent can be used in an in-clinic setting as well. Taking that through, quickly checking, and taking my PIN number, making sure that I'm not going to make an error here. Starting off with an initial identifier for the patient and an initial password or PIN number. Obviously, as a system, we are asking the patient to change that password into something that he is able to remember, yet complex enough, obviously. We want to make sure that data are secure. And this is something we are now giving the patient access to our My Trials environment, which is the patient entry. I am showing you this through a web interface, but I could have easily done that on a mobile device, on a smartphone, through an app as well. Our My Trial space is something that patients keep using, not just for the consent part, but also, for example, for the eCOA piece, in case there is like daily diaries or questionnaires to be completed, that would all still be using that same patient interface. So also for the patient, it's fully unified if needed. It's a pretty straightforward flow for the patient. Patient does have a button to start off or to trigger that telemedicine video chat as well. And the patient can easily navigate back and forward using the screen, using the buttons on the screen here. And the system will then obviously guide me as a patient through that solution. I could have done that in combination with a televisit, but for the sake of time, we're not going to do that right now. It's pretty straightforward, a system that is able to also have multimedia content enabled, which we're not going to be spending time on today, thinking about, because we have quite a lot of topics that we want to give you. But obviously, we can give you a multimedia component to help the patients get a better understanding of what consent is about, what a clinical study is about, or what study-specific details are about. Obviously, now you as sponsors or CRO representatives obviously will have to think, when you're working with multimedia, what do I want to do? To what extent do I want to make that study specific or not? Moving through, and if I would want to, I can obviously always go back. I could log out as a patient. I could stop my verification at any point in time. I could interrupt and come back into the system. We have displayed the PDF now as the informed consent as a kind of a PDF style. Yet the system is expecting me to go through and has the traceability on how much time we're spending here. And I need to go through the whole PDF. If I have questions, I can note them. I can still discuss them with my investigator or the site user, either through the integrated televisit capability or when I'm going on site, for example, for signing my consent and having my screening visits itself. going to click through, obviously, for the sake of the flow in this particular case. And the system is going to enable me as a patient to sign off. In this particular case, we have set up the signature using if I would do it on a tablet using a stylus or my finger. In particular case where I'm using my laptop, I'm signing off using the mouse, and I can put on my signature here. And with that, that signature is now being incorporated. It's not just tracked in the system with the date and time of signature, but actually that signature is also now being incorporated in my informed consent form, which I can download here, but is equally emailed to me and to the site user, to the investigator, as an indicator that I, as a patient, have signed off on my consent. And as a site user, I'm ready to move on. So as a patient, I've done my consenting. I'm going to log out, close this session off, and I'm going to go back into the screen as a site user. As I just said, I'm actually, as a site user, as a patient, the system is notifying me that, hey, a certain patient has signed off on the consent form. So even in case of remote consenting, I will get that immediate notification that a patient is ready, can think about what's the scheduling, but obviously there is something else I have to do as a site user, and that is I will have to countersign. So let me refresh my screen here. And for the patient that I had created, I can now also actually verify the PDF itself, check that the signature is there. Should this have been a study, for example, in a kind of pediatric setup, then we would have to check, do I have both signatures potentially? If you're working with an assent and a legal representative. In case of the scenario, I just have the participant signature. And yes, we have all the information on the signature. I can ask my patient for the identification as well, so I can compare that the signature is the right one when the patient is coming in. So honestly, I'm good to go. I always have access to this consent form, and I'm going to obviously now also apply my signature in the system, which is in a similar way of doing using the mouse, putting that signature on. And again, also my signature is being tracked and stored in the underlying data model, and obviously being incorporated again in that same PDF form, which is now a signed document. And that signed document I can download, give to the patient, but equally the patient, we have the email address obviously as part of the detail, as contact details. Patient also gets that same signed informed consent as part of via an email as well. If my patient is on site already, I've been doing potentially consenting in clinic, I can actually move straight ahead and start my screening procedures. I'm going to register my patient, and we're moving straight away from consenting into the EDC portion of the system. No need to logging in, logging out. We can take over data that's relevant from the e-consent. And actually, my system is assuming when I do that, in this particular case, that the visit date is actually taking place that exact same day as I click the button. So on today, 13th of November, and we're moving on into collecting the data. So system, our EDC module is again set up in a way that enables site users to easily collect the data, that helps them to perform all the necessary assessments, to perform all the necessary tasks, potentially even collect additional data. Looking at protocol version, we have obviously taken over the consent date from the consenting module. Normally, we would have done in real life, we would have done that for the date of birth as well, because we have collected that already. But in the demo systems, we like to show you also what real-time validation is about, because ultimately it's helping site users, investigators to collect quality data. So should I make an erroneous entry in my system, the system will give me a real-time warning saying that, hey, for this particular case, and forgive me, that this is just a demo case, but the system is warning me in real time that something is not okay. This is obviously configurable, the dynamic behavior and the validations. So we could have done that in a different way. We could have configured that to fire real time, to fire at any point in time as what makes sense for your study. Clicking through, and I can easily navigate. If I would click next, my system will remind me that I am missing some data, and which I can resolve instantly. I'm not waiting when clicking the save button, or in our case, the next button. Now, we have obviously done an electronic consenting, but you all know that when working with consenting, there are patients that are not comfortable with signing electronically. You might have sites that are not signed, that are not allowed to sign electronically, or you might be in a country where signing electronically is kind of like a hot potato. And especially on the European side, we know that there are quite some countries where there is still a debate on under which conditions patients can sign electronically on informed consent. So we have a backup process for that, and we allow you to also have a kind of like a paper backup flow for that. And in such a case, we build in a kind of a screen that helps the site users that forces the site users to also collect that paper consent form if that's needed. That's a pretty straightforward one. Let me navigate to my right folder here. It can be simply an upload. It can be simply dragging and dropping a file in. I could have actually even scanned something in from my mobile, for example, a signature page, and did that upload to my mobile if needed as well. Can provide comments if I have to, but at the moment, until I upload that paper consent form, I cannot move forward. So the system is also helping me to comply with the protocol requirements here. I'm good now. My document is uploaded, and I can move on. I can continue to go back. Obviously, we have set up the system, and I've been talking into the system as if I'm talking to my patient, entering data in real time while the patient is in front of me. Now, that is sometimes useful, sometimes that may not be the case. So if you are promoting direct data capture, you may still end up in cases where sites are actually not capturing data in real time, or where they have underlying source documents or source data. Inclusion and exclusion criteria is a pretty classical case for that topic. We have set up our page with a classical C- layout. So single question to confirm inclusion and exclusion criteria. Obviously, we have real-time dynamics in the back that if we say something is not met, that we can enter what criteria were violated. For the sake of the demo, we're going to assume that the patient is actually is eligible. But I do have additional documents underneath that. I have actually been filling out a source sheet, and I'm going to mark the system to say, actually, dear CRA, I do have a transcribed source document available, can provide my CRA with my assessment date, and I can actually do an additional document upload if that would be needed. For example, my completed eligibility criteria sheet that I have been filling out for the patient itself. I can make that document available as a kind of like a source sheet for the CRA to verify, so that the CRA does not just have, for example, the paper consent form, but also my assessment on eligibility criteria as preparation or for remote verification instead of coming on site. So again, the system is enabling you to implement a remote verification or use uploads of source documents as a kind of way to facilitate on-site monitoring as well. I'm going to move on. Dynamic behavior is obviously in the system. Should I want to say that something is not done or skipped, there's two ways. I mean, skipping means that I'm temporarily skipping an assessment for the sake of not having the data yet. If I say something is not done at all, I can actually easily provide a reason not done. That reason is available for the CRA, and CRA will then know that he or she does not need to expect any data for this particular form. And all of that information, what I'm putting in, whether it was transcribed, is something that's information that CRA will know. CRA can factor that into something like risk-based monitoring, remote monitoring capabilities, etc. So all of this is where we can enter data. Let me put in some more data here. And coming to something, what do we do with dates? Well, we know medical history, we are often dealing with unknown dates, partial dates. Do we work with date conventions? Do we allow partial dates? And it's a kind of a mix, depending on what you would want. Obviously, we would want to work with partial dates. We want to allow sites to enter date conventions. Will they know the date convention? Yes, well, we can put on manuals here, we can put on help text here, but actually we build those cases in, those conventions into the validation messages if that is desired as well. And that solves immediately again the discrepancy. And again, as a last topic on showing you what kind of guidance can we really give you is an example of how do we give instructions. In classical EDCs, we don't tend to give much instructions anymore on what site users have to do when it comes down to, for example, handling of samples, handling of cartridges, handling of IMP. In our ESOS module, we're actually pretty happy to build all of that in and enable you to collect evidence if you would ever need that. So again, one of those examples on how our guided workflow will help site users to comply with the protocol, and the real-time validations obviously mean good data quality, which helps you afterwards in processing the data as well. Uploading that last document. And moving on, and as you can see, I have now gone through my complete visit. I have not skipped any of the assessments. I've marked one as permanently missing or not done at all. Should I have skipped something, then obviously my visit from a site perspective would not have been complete. I would have to be able to go back. So a little bit in terms of the flow, the guided flow on how you collect the data, on what the system is giving you as guidance or what guidance capabilities we have in terms of building in features that help your sites to comply with the protocol. You've seen the upload of the informed consent. You've seen the upload of the cartridge evidence. Now, we have gone from consenting into data collection. Next thing, what I want to show you is how does our randomization fit into that. So we're moving on to our evaluation assessment visit. A quick recap on the eligibility. Simply going to say that we're meeting that because you've seen that form, nothing to be said about that anymore. We're moving on to our randomization CRF form. So we're going to be confirming that we want to randomize a subject. And we have built in a stratification factor based on weight. I'm going to move on, and the system we're then moving actually from the EDC module, from our ESOS module, into our randomization module at the exact same time. We're moving in seamless. We simply move on. I do not need to log in, log out as a site user. Click on the randomization, and the system is checking what kit I will have to dispense to my patient. So perfectly fine. I get my randomization number. I get my kit number, so I'm also good. And I could have obviously verified my supplies within the system as well. And actually, as you can see, my details are also being populated retrospectively onto my randomization CRF form and make it into my clinical data sets with that as well. With that, I have gone through. Now, obviously, I've completed this visit, and I can show you so much more in terms of how we collect data, how our solution is integrated and giving a full integrated flow across our different modules. But I think that this has been enough to give you a first impression on how we collect the data, how we enable site users, investigators, to deliver you good quality data. And good quality data will obviously simplify life when we are looking in terms of monitoring, managing the data, and ultimately going into the final reporting and analysis. And with that, I'm ending my demonstration, the first part of the demonstration for this webinar.
Great, thanks a lot, Jan. That was super. Actually, we got a question that came in, which I can actually answer. Whilst you were talking, you were showing the patient-reported outcomes component, and the question was, could patients use their own device? Does the study provide devices for patients? And the question is, yeah, we could do that both ways. So yeah, we certainly would encourage bring your own device, but equally, we can provide provision devices for patients without a suitable device. We can also provision devices for all patients as needed. So it's really down to the needs of the study. So thank you for that question. And let's just carry on. And so I think at this point, we want to just look a little bit further downstream in that end-to-end process and look at how ThoughtSphere's data orchestration platform helps to automate and simplify the more advanced downstream data management processes, including things like risk-based quality management, risk-based quality monitoring, and also advanced data validation and reconciliation. So over to you, Christina.
Thanks, Jan, and thanks, Bill, for that introduction. So we'll start off with just this interactive visual of ThoughtSphere's end-to-end data orchestration platform. And starting on the left, the platform can seamlessly ingest data from a multitude of sources. It was built to be source agnostic and has flexible data connectors and data scheduler to automate the data intake from clinical and operational systems, including Signant's platform. So there's no upfront data transformation required, which saves a lot of time. In the middle section is our next generation data repository. This centralized data lake is where raw data is aggregated and standardized. The patented AI engine applies study metadata, CDISC standards, and proprietary ontology to transform raw data into targeted models such as SDTM and ADAM. The mapping engine can map up to 80% of SDTM variables automatically. And this process really is what sets the foundation for the other applications by transforming this disparate data into really a harmonized data fabric to support all downstream reviews and holistic study oversight. So on the right of this image is our suite of end user applications that empower different stakeholders, from clinical operational teams to biostatisticians and safety monitors. And these applications are fully integrated to support that cross-functional collaboration and action tracking, which is so important. Central to all of the applications as well is our data visualization tool and our statistical computing environment, allowing models and data visualizations to be deployed and shared across the stakeholders. So if you want to advance to the next slide. For today's webinar, I'm really going to focus on the out-of-the-box dashboards to support a risk-based quality management approach, and also some of the biometric capabilities available in the platform to facilitate that end-to-end data operations experience, to facilitate ClinOps and data management working seamlessly together and communicating and surfacing issues to really support site oversight and make sure that risks are being addressed and mitigated as efficiently as possible. So moving to the next slide. Let me first talk about our robust RBQM and study oversight capabilities. As I mentioned, the platform has a built-in data visualization tool, and out of the box, it provides over 147 visualizations, charts, listings to really support that risk-based approach, provide operational oversight, and also clinical data reviews. Additionally, users can create any custom data reports and visualizations they needed directly within the platform. We've organized all of our out-of-the-box analytics into several dashboards, with 6 of those dashboard buckets kind of highlighted or shown here. So I'll walk through a few of those and kind of give some highlights before I jump into the demo. So starting at the left top, the study oversight dashboard offers several key risk indicators to monitor critical data like SAEs, early termination rates, and the volume of important protocol deviations. Alongside the suite of KRIs are predictive quality tolerance limits. So within the platform, the team can set parameters at the beginning of the trial with the expected subject count, what the expected QTL rate would be, and the study duration, as well as a few other parameters. And using those parameters, the QTL model will generate a projected trend line using polynomial regression with seasonality to really predict the volume of instances and the timing of future events to see if and be able to predict if that QTL limit will be breached. So this allows the team to proactively get in front of the issue before it becomes an issue, rather than just retrospectively, noting when a QTL is actually breached. Our statistical monitoring dashboard takes study level oversight even a step further by providing models that work behind the scenes to identify duplicate patients, unusual data correlations, and even digit preference in data entry. So a deep dive of that dashboard and even some of our AI-driven data ingestion and transformation capabilities was provided last year in a webinar that we did with Signant. And so I think Lisa will put the link to that webinar in the chat if anyone wants to check it out to learn a little bit more about that. And then just kind of moving through the dashboards, we have clinical analytics dashboards to really monitor safety and efficacy measures across the study. We have site level review dashboard to really examine site performance against each other and compare sites across the study using key metrics that look at the study and country averages compared to that of the site. And then we have a subject level oversight, which provides graphical patient profiles and really gives the medical team the context they need to see how that patient's journey is progressing through the trial. And last but not least, just to keep the team on track and making sure milestones are met and review cycles are being completed, we offer an operational and data quality dashboard to oversee that. So I'll demo some of these dashboards shortly, but first let me move to the next slide and discuss some of the biometric functionality. So the platform provides centralized data management from study startup and planning through database lock, including the generation of validation-ready data sets. And for study startup, the platform provides a comprehensive data check library that spans 58 CDIS domains. And we have a smart check model, and that's really our AI engine that recommends and pre-configures the data checks from the library for your study and populates them as draft data checks in your data check plan. So it really saves a lot of upfront time and creates kind of consistency across studies and how you're assigning data checks and adding them to your plan. And when it comes to listing reviews, teams can set up cadence-based reviews with built-in data review checklists directly in the platform. So this replaces spreadsheets and ensures that the whole team has the latest and greatest data at their fingertips, that they're reminded when they should be performing a listing review, and that triggers them to do that review within their workflow. So moving on to study conduct, the platform optimizes the workflow process by providing streamlined workflows to review discrepancies generated from your data checks, to perform third-party reconciliations, so comparing EDC data to maybe your central lab and making sure there's matching records across those, and then also those listing reviews. And this really allows the team to focus only on new and changed data, so they're not having to review aggregate listings every month, but only really it's the platform is highlighting data that has changed or is new. Additionally, we offer integrated query write-back capabilities with most of the major EDCs, so Rave, Medrio, et cetera. And that includes write-back capabilities to Signant's Unified Platform. So this really allows the data managers to centralize query management. They're not having to navigate between multiple systems to, issue a query and determine if a query should be issued, et cetera. And then as we move to database lock and data delivery, the platform has a clean patient tracker to support the tracking and cleaning of data at the patient level to really support those interim analyses, database lock, and scheduling site closeout visits to make sure that all the data is clean, verified, PI signatures collected, et cetera, to move forward with closing out the visit or the site. And to support data set generation, kind of the last leg, getting close to CSR, users can review all of the auto-mapped STDM and ATOM variables and map additional variables that weren't auto-mapped or make adjustments to those that were auto-mapped using the platform's clinical mapping workbench. And the platform provides collaborative workflows and approval workflows to make sure that the mapping is version controlled and is really an automated process as you move along that continuum. And then additionally, once you have the ATOM data sets approved, you can use those in our TFL designer that's built into the platform to really rapidly generate tables, figures, and listings. So let me now take over the screen and just kind of showcase some of this in the demo environment for you. Let me pull it up here. So hopefully you guys can see my screen now, or it's coming up. So I'm logged in as Daniel Martin. This is a DM user. So this is the user homepage for the data manager user role that's configured within our platform. So it's just showing relative information pertinent to him as a user and to the studies that he is assigned. And this is different for each user role. So a medical monitor would have a different landing screen. But let's look at the navigation menu here on the left side, and let me go into some of the dashboards that I was talking to that are out of the box. So I mentioned study oversight. So within the study oversight dashboard, we have KRIs, we have QTLs, we have the site review dashboard. So let me just talk through some of these and let you see how they look. So this is a key risk indicator for screen failure rate. This is a bubble graph. So each site is represented by a bubble. The size of the bubble represents the number of subjects at that site that were screened. And then you'll see these bands with green, yellow, and red. So the yellow band represents where a site is 1 standard deviation from the mean of the number of screen failures. And the red is where a site is 2 standard deviations from the mean. So it's very easy to identify the sites that would be maybe in the top right quadrant. That would be very risky to the overall success of the study, right? Because they have a lot of patients and they're trending away from the standard deviation of the norm. So what is causing that? It looks to be maybe a potential risk or something we want to dive into. So all of these bubbles, it's very interactive graph. If you click on a bubble, you'll see the details for that site. So this site, they had 6 subjects screened and 5 of those subjects resulted in screen failures. You can see most of the reasons were that they did not meet eligibility criteria. So this would just be one example where perhaps it makes sense to create an action for the CRA, right? To follow up with the site to see if they're actually trying to recruit the right patients, or seeing if there's any commonality for what criteria those patients aren't meeting. So within the platform, you can create, the description of the issue, what you want them to do. You can assign it to, what type of action this is. You can assign it to the central monitoring queue and save this, and it will be tracked within the platform. We also have that where we can integrate directly into a CTMS, or we can integrate directly into Unified SmartSignals. So if we want them to see this, get email to them or any of those connections, we have that available and can configure that for you. So let me navigate from there. I'll talk about some of the QTLs. We talked about those predictive model QTLs. So this is just one example of non-completer subjects. So these are subjects that do not meet the primary efficacy endpoint. They discontinue or withdraw from the study before that data is collected. And so it would exclude them from some of the study analysis. So you can see here, this is the QTL line. This is what's not to be breached, right? They can't have more than 157 of these subjects during the life of the study. The blue line reflects what is actually being collected. So as subjects are being enrolled and on the study, how many non-completers are actually occurring. The yellow line is that expected, right? So at the beginning of the trial, what the study team thought based on the recruitment rate and based on the number of subjects they expected to withdraw early from the study or early term. And then this green line is showing the projected. So this is that polynomial regression, linear regression line that you can kind of see using the context and seasonality and multiple factors that go in. And you can see the confidence that R squared is the confidence of this line and how accurate it would be. So it allows the team to get ahead, if they're seeing the projected line to go above the QTL, they can see that and take action before it actually occurs, which is a good process and something that I think is very useful for study teams. So now I'm clicking on the site review dashboard. This one's another really pertinent one that I think is very important to really support the targeted SDV and really monitoring, when you should send CRAs to a site. So this is showing all of the sites with the highest, cumulative risk score and the most active patients surfaced at the top. And it's showing the different KRIs or risk indicators that played into that cumulative risk score that I noted. If I click on any one of these sites, and drill down a little farther, then it pulls into more analytics behind that site to give the user a little more depth. So you can see the KRIs for that site and how they're trending over time, month by month. And then these different tabs up here, they really allow you to see how that site, this is by AEs, how the site is trending compared to the country average and the study average. So there's just different analytics here. Again, you can create actions from any of these screens to assign so that you can follow up accordingly. So I just went through some of our dashboards. There's a lot more here to go. If I click on the clinical analytics, I'll just show you the breadth and the volume of different analytics available out of the box. Again, this is just making sure that the project team can get their eyes on the data in a very meaningful way quickly at the start of the study without having to build all of this, per study on a custom basis. So moving forward into kind of our data management components and looking towards even the data set generation. So we have study plans where you can create your study plan directly in the platform. So define your data checks and actually create the rule logic or programming logic that would generate a query or a discrepancy when that check is met. And I mentioned that we have a library of data checks that really facilitate or expedite the creation of your data check plan for a study. So here's just a screenshot, or not a screenshot, but a view of all of the data checks within our library that are available out of the box. And when you go to create your data check plan, I'll just show this really quickly. You can add, click there. You can select smart rules. And when you do that, it will automatically compare the study data that's being collected for your study to the data check library data checks, and then pre-configure those checks for your plan. So when you click smart rules and hit create, that will auto create. And it will also allow you to specify which kind of language you want that rule to be programmed in. So let's just click over here. I'll click out of this for the sake of time. And I just want to show, this is a data check plan with a lot of pre-configured data checks already there. And so, you know, it really just saves a whole lot of time. You can toggle on the auto query, so it will directly, when the data check conditions are met, it will send an auto query directly to the EDC, so Unified Platform, Signant's Unified Platform. If it's off, then it will fire a discrepancy within our platform for a data manager or medical monitor or whatever user role is appropriate to review to determine if a query should be issued. So I've gone through this really fast. The last thing I kind of am going to touch on before I hand it back is, you know, what it looks like from the study conduct angle. So once you have your data checks in place, what does the review workflow look like, and how is that synergized within this platform? So I mentioned, you know, data checks. Once you have those configured, if it's going to fire a discrepancy within the ThoughtSphere platform, that then a data manager user can review and determine next steps. This is kind of the workflow. So I'm clicking on a discrepancy that is fired. You can see the data check. It's looking for duplicate CM terms. It's kind of giving, you know, details about that data check. And then over here, you see all of these tabs. So you can look and see, you know, has this query already been issued before? Is there anything outstanding? Maybe perhaps a CRA found the duplicate CM terms when they were on site doing site monitoring and already issued a query. I could check that here. If there's any related actions, so perhaps a medical monitor noticed this too when they were looking at a listing review of ConMeds, and see if there's anything, so I'm not duplicating effort or bothering the site with duplicate actions. But let's say in this case there's not, and I want to create a query to you know, let the site know that they have a potential duplicate ConMed entry. When I hit create query, it's going to go ahead and pull up a window that's pre-populated with a lot of the information from the data check, including the row numbers of the duplicate ConMed entry. And this information is basically describing where in the EDC system should this query appear on. So I can select, you know, I want it to appear on the ConMed treatment field for row 16, ConMed on row 16. I can select the marking group. So when the query is answered, who it will go back to review the answer and hopefully close out the query. And when I click save, then that will put this query in queue to be written back to the EDC with the next data refresh. And so I went through that quickly. I know we have a little bit more to talk about for how this transitions and kind of how the risk-based approach really helps facilitate that targeted SDV monitoring. So I'll go ahead and hand back to Jan at this point. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. That was very insightful. Next slide. So what you have seen from Christina is obviously a way to get a perfect view on what is the risks, what is the status of your study, what's the performance of your different sites. We've spoken about, Christina has shown you quality tolerance limits. She has shown you advanced analytics. She has shown you dashboards with key risk indicators. So that's all giving you a perfect view on how your study is doing, how your sites are doing, where are there potentially sites that need extra attention, where are there potentially patients that need extra monitoring. Now, that is a great way, but the big question is always, how do you turn that holistic overview into an effective monitoring strategy, and how do you execute on that monitoring strategy? And for that, we are looking at two critical components. One is obviously how often and what are your CRAs doing when they go on site? What is their schedule? What are they looking at? What is the balance between source data verification, high-level source data review? And what are they doing potentially remotely, if that is allowed in a certain country? Do they have access to, have they remote access to source data and documents? And why do you do that? Why do you do those activities remotely? So let's take a look at how our unified platform allows you to implement that a powerful risk-based and remote strategy. Can we go to the next slide? So risk-based monitoring, targeted monitoring, we're using multiple terms in the industry nowadays, but what is it that we are able to offer you? And what we give you in our solution is fully configurable. You have a basis configuration. What is it that, when do you want monitoring to happen? Which forms need monitoring? But ultimately, we want something that is a targeted monitoring that is fully configurable and fully adjustable. So, and there's different elements you can use. Whether you're looking at direct data entry versus transcribed data entry, which I've shown earlier. What do you want to do for maybe a first patient on site versus later patients on site? Do you maybe want to have like some sampling on patients where you increase your SDV level again? Do you want to go just by critical pages, critical data? But what if something goes wrong? So our solution has all those algorithms, and different algorithms based on patient conditions, based on form or data conditions, can be combined into a holistic set that really allows you to tailor the monitoring to what you need. I want to start off with a high amount of monitoring for first patient. If everything goes well, I go down to critical data, but maybe every now and then I want to have a patient where I do more again, or I have a patient or a site that's less performant, I increase my monitoring capabilities as well. That is great, but obviously, when sending out a CRA, we need to give the CRA something at hand to perform that monitoring. So what you can see on slide is actually our targeted monitoring report that tells the CRA, based on the algorithms, based on what we feed into the system, what needs to be verified on site. And that's actually a dynamic report, so it works in real time, takes the latest information, flags what needs attention, and even allows the CRA to mark what has been done. So also in terms of documentation and traceability, here you get the perfect solution from our system. Next slide. But that's one thing. That's what we are giving the CRA as a support. But also, if you want to be looking at what are my efficiencies in terms of saving travel time, we can do verification on site, which is obviously taking up quite a lot of budget, lots of travel time. But there may be things that we can do remotely in advance and also increase our efficiencies in that way. So we do have the integrated document uploads. I've shown you the upload of the informed consent form. I've shown you the upload of the evidence on the cartridge handling. I've shown you an ad hoc upload on other source documents. So those documents can be made available to the CRA, and the CRA can use that to already start verifying certain data remotely. That can be to save on the number of on-site visits, but that can also be maybe in preparation for an upcoming monitoring visit or in follow-up of a monitoring visit and issues that were identified while the CRA was on-site. So, and ultimately, it's on the site users to control how long those documents stay available and when they are taken out of the system when they are no longer needed. So that's all capabilities that we have. And lastly, when CRAs get documents, they can also verify, maybe query back to the site if something is wrong with the document. So all in all, capabilities that we can offer you to have a powerful monitoring strategy that is a risk-based, taking into account what is site performance, something that you can modify, but not just the risk-based monitoring. We're also giving you capabilities to implement remote monitoring on top of your on-site monitoring as needed. And with that, I'm giving back to Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Jan and Christina. So we've seen the combination of Signant's Unified Platform and ThoughtSphere's data orchestration platform and how that can be used to manage and simplify this sort of this full data capture and management process, from the front end data capture and monitoring to the back end advanced data management and validation processes. So thank you both for showing us that. We've got a few minutes, so let's just spend the last few minutes with some Q&A. We've received some questions online already, but if you've got any additional questions for our speakers, please enter them now using that Q&A button that's at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to get to those. But from those we've already got, Christina, maybe start with you. Just a quick question. How does the platform handle data integration from multiple sources?
That's a great question, and I will refer you to that link that Lisa sent because our CTO actually was part of that webinar and gave a very detailed answer there. But with that being said, I think the secret sauce, so to speak, of our platform is our data lake architecture that uses a NoSQL database design. So we can really ingest, our system was meant to be and made to be designed to be system agnostic. So we can ingest structured or unstructured data through SFTP, from picking it up from SFTP folder, web services, or just REST API connectors. And we have a lot of those connectors built for common off-the-shelf systems out of the box, which saves a lot of time. But because we can pick up that data in its raw native state, there's no transformation needed to load it in our platform. It comes with all of that metadata rich context, which we then use upstream to really transform the data across all the disparate sources in one go. So I don't know if that fully answered the question. I recommend that that other webinar for a detail, but that's in a nutshell.
Yeah, thank you. And I know data aggregation is a real strength of the ThoughtSphere platform. Jan, did you want to add anything? I know the unified platform has sort of open APIs, etc., to help integrate.
Yes, I mean, with this concept, I mean, there's always been a debate on where should you integrate your external data sources in? Do you do that directly in your EDC? Do you do that in the backend? Well, the combination between us and ThoughtSphere gives you the flexibility and the choice to decide where do you integrate on based on what makes most sense. For example, if you have a wearable in a study and you need your site user or your investigator to maybe perform a certain assessment based on wearable information, then it does make sense to have the integration directly into the EDC and have the data from together with our data transfer over into ThoughtSphere. But if you're collecting classical, for example, other data sources, maybe imaging data, lab data, ECG data, you can equally say, well, we'll go straight into ThoughtSphere's platform and use a data lake and the capabilities over there and not clog up the EDC with information where the site user doesn't have to do anything on.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Jan. I know we've had just a few comments asking about recordings of this. So just to clarify, we will send out a link to the recording of this at the end. So you'll certainly get that in the next week or so. Another question. We've probably got time for probably one more, maybe two if we're quick. Jan, can the platform support adaptive trial designs? And if so, how?
Yes, definitely. When you have a protocol amendment or other needs to make changes to the system, we can perfectly implement that without impacting the study itself. So we have a powerful designer module that allows you to start working on amendments and push those out without any impact on the operations in terms of site data entry, data monitoring, data verification. And Christina, I'm sure that also on your side, you can easily adapt your setup and your data ingestion and your analytics as they come along, or as they are needed because of the protocol amendments.
Yes, for sure. So having the plans digital really allows for an agile versus a waterfall approach to making adjustments to your plans based on protocol amendments. Also, one thing I really think is important that I didn't get to demo just due to time, but I spoke about our clean patient tracker. You can set up data cutoffs and snapshot dates and what subjects, whether a cohort or whether just a subset through a certain date of data that you want clean to support an interim analysis or a DMC, and really track, SDV complete and queries closed and all of those important data integrity milestones within the platform in an automated approach. So that saves a lot of time and really supports that adaptive design.
Well, look, there's so much more to talk about, and actually there's more questions that we can answer, and we will answer those by email. But that really does bring us to the end of today's webinar. We're at the top of the hour. So it just leaves me to thank our presenters, Jan and Christina. Thank you very much for your interesting presentations. And for everybody who's attended today, thank you very much for attending, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.